Donald Trump might, at this point, have better luck stopping a freight train. But he's trying anyway this afternoon to turn the page, to move on from what has become the most enduring debacle of his second term as president. That is, of course, the Epstein Files ordeal, which Politico reports has entered a new stage. Quote, if it wasn't a crisis already, it is indisputably one now. And it threatens to swallow the news cycle and drastically complicate the GOP's push to enact Trump's agenda. As we speak, Donald Trump is in the midst of what amounts to an arm-waving look over here mission. He's at the headquarters of the Federal Reserve following repeated ceaseless criticism of Fed Chair Jerome Powell over myriad things, especially over his refusal to lower interest rates and the cost of renovations to that building. Donald Trump is expected to deliver remarks from the Fed. We'll watch them for you. If news is made, we will report it to you immediately. But it's the story that the administration can't quite escape at this point. And there are developments to tell you about, because we understand Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche met with Jeffrey Epstein's accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, in a Tallahassee courthouse. That meeting appears to be over. Maxwell's attorney said as much, adding that her client answered all the questions. If Blanche emerges at any point in the next couple hours and speaks to cameras, we'll monitor that for you as well. The Trump administration framed Blanche's visit to Maxwell as a search for answers, a position complicated by a couple of factors. First, Maxwell appears to be an unreliable witness. Among her charges was perjury. And a July 2020 Department of Justice filing, while Trump was president, continued her supporting her continued detention, reads in part, quote, the defendant's willingness to brazenly lie under oath about her conduct, including some of the conduct charged in the indictment, strongly suggests her true motive has been and remains to avoid being held accountable for her crimes. Now, the second complicating factor, more news outlets, including the New York Times, have now confirmed the story we came on the air with at this hour yesterday. That is that Attorney General Pam Bondi told Donald Trump in the spring that his name appears in the Epstein files. We'll point out again and again that the mere presence of Donald Trump's name in the Epstein files is not the same thing as evidence that Donald Trump committed a crime or engaged in any wrongdoing, but it is notable, given how badly this has been handled and how hard the administration is insisting to its own base that it should move on. Last night, a lawyer for some 200 Epstein victims called on lawmakers to subpoena Epstein's estate for a so-called birthday book that was presented to Epstein at his 50th birthday party by Ghislaine Maxwell. Watch.
I do know that they were involved in the assembly of the book, several of them. They were told by Ghislaine to assist in putting the book together. Others have seen the book post birthday and after it was assembled. So the existence of the book is it's an absolute fact. Now, who wrote letters? What's in the book? You're going to have to get the book to figure it out.
Now, following that interview, MSNBC reached out to the Epstein estate to confirm not just the existence of the book in question, but whether or not it is still in their possession. Representatives responded, quote, the Epstein estate will comply with all lawful process, end quote. That is where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. NBC News White House correspondent Vaughn Hilliard joins us. Also joining us, New York Times Justice Department reporter Glenn Thrush, and former U.S. Attorney, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Harry Litman is here. Glenn Thrush, in their minds, what do they think they're doing visiting Ghislaine Maxwell in prison?
I cannot get into their minds, Nicole.
I guess let me put it differently. By their telling, what is it that they say they're doing by visiting Ghislaine Maxwell?
Thank you, because the other option was too painful for me to contemplate. No, I think they're doing essentially whatever they can to give the impression that they're sleuthing this out to the max. Essentially, this is really kind of like a small version of what they've been doing all along, what Pam Bondi and Kash Patel did initially in ordering this massive investigation of all the Epstein files down in Winchester, Virginia. What they're trying to do is they're trying to prove that they are going all all the way to determine whatever it is that people want them to determine. The difference this time is Trump himself is involved. And I think that Wall Street Journal story about the birthday book changed the game. Again, in this particular instance, this is a very, very narrow endeavor that Todd Blanche is engaged in. He is somebody who in one legal filing earlier this year as Deputy Attorney General mistakenly described himself as Donald Trump's lawyer. He is kind of acting in that capacity to some extent now. What is expected from Ghislaine Maxwell's interview, I think you can get out of what her lawyer has said, that it was a friendly, he's described, I think it is a friendly series of interactions. I don't think we're going to get information that's deleterious to Donald Trump. And this is a parallel to what they're attempting to do in court, attempting to unseal grand jury testimony in the Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein case. Again, extremely narrow, very unlikely to produce anything that is negative to Donald Trump.
Well, let me ask you to put your old political hat on then for a second, Glenn. I mean, their political problem isn't that imprisoned Ghislaine Maxwell wasn't properly interrogated. I mean, she's a convicted sex criminal. Their political problem is that Marjorie Taylor Greene posted on X that what she believes is there is a cover-up of other powerful people and that the answers lie in the files. Joe Rogan keeps talking about videotape. Ghislaine Maxwell, if there are files and videotape, didn't take them to prison. How does the visit to Maxwell deal with the perception among Trump's core supporters that they're sitting on a trove of evidence that they won't release?
I mean, that's a great question. You know, what's going on here is the typical Trumpian thing of throwing everything at the wall at the same time. And I should also bring in the other big thing that's going on, or medium thing that's going on, is this Tulsi Gabbard referral to the Justice Department of this Russiagate Obama investigation, which Trump literally, I think, in a White House appearance yesterday, correct me if I'm wrong, said Republicans should be talking about instead of the Epstein case. They're just looking for any kind of distraction, anything to show that they're doing something without necessarily doing anything that could harm him. But I think the big political question here is, wouldn't they be better served by just riding it out and maybe not frantically taking all this action? I don't think Trump and the White House has an option because they only have one speed, and that's 11, right? I'm mixing up my metaphors there. But I think, isn't there, and I've spoken to a couple of people in Trump world over the last 48 hours who have suggested, why don't you just lower the temperature and lower the pace of activity and actually take a page from Mike Johnson, which is get out of town, get out of the spotlight. But they're not inclined to do that. And frankly, I don't think this thing's going to work. And they're going to try something else next week, would be my guess.
I mean, Vaughn Hilliard, Glenn is correct in saying that Donald Trump said that he is talking about arresting President Obama and wants Republicans to, quote, just talk about that, end quote, instead of Epstein. The problem is where Trump has used faux scandals to deflect, it has been to deflect from a scandal that comes from an investigation of facts he wants to keep hidden. This is an hysteria that is predicated on a hysteria that comes from deep inside his own base. The conspiracy theories about Epstein are not based on investigative journalism. In the timeline, the investigative journalism is, and I'll say this to all of you, for better or for worse, following the heat map on the Epstein story amid MAGA voters. So who's calling the political moves in the Trump White House, Vaughn?
Who is calling the political moves is the president himself, Nicole. And let's be clear, what differentiates this Department of Justice, even more so than his first Department of Justice from his first term, is the fact that he ensured that people like his own defense attorneys were in the highest positions within that office. And if you go back, I think this is why who he sent down to Tallahassee is so important. Sending Todd Blanche, his personal defense attorney, is so critical to this. We don't expect to get a transcript out of this meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell. But this is somebody who, when you go back to the first term, we know that Jeff Sessions, for a year and a half, continually defended himself from repeated attacks by the president over his handling and decision to remove himself from the investigation about potential Russian collusion and turn that over to a special counsel. And then it was Bill Barr who resigned in December of 2020 because the president was repeatedly attacking him to further investigate and call the 2020 election a fraud. And William Barr, after leaving office, said that he directly told Donald Trump that it was BS. And so undoubtedly, we know, based off of history here and from our reporting, that the Department of Justice is undoubtedly facing pressure from this White House as it goes and meets here with Ghislaine Maxwell. And I think that that is where having Todd Blanche, who already we know the defense attorney for Ghislaine Maxwell, who is meeting with just last year, acknowledged that Todd Blanche was somebody who had become a personal friend. I think that we should not ignore the way that the standards and norms and the independence in which the Department of Justice has long stood, how that ultimately implicates this, because Donald Trump built a Department of Justice that was a political one. It's not about calling the shots now. They already have individuals who very well understood what their job is within it.